and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys. And today we are talking about Let Me Lie by Claire Mackintosh. I picked this book up because I've been scrolling around the internet one day and I saw somebody refer to Claire Mackintosh as the queen of the plot twist. And I was like, I like a good plot twist. Let's see how this goes. I picked this one up because it was the most recent of her 3 books, and from reading the back I was picking up like some mystery thriller vibes. And one thing that's really interesting that I learned while reading the about the author page is that Claire Mackintosh actually spent 12 years on the police force in England. So I felt like, okay, that's going to give her some, extra insight into these sort of things. And I was excited to read it. And I'm just going to start you off with this little blurb here on the back because it sums it up pretty good. The police say it was suicide. Anna says it was murder. They're both wrong. So I was like, okay, tell me about it. So we start off, Anna is the 20-something daughter of Tom and Caroline. Now, the thing is that almost 2 years ago, Anna's father, Tom, allegedly killed himself. He went to a high cliff near the sea, filled a bag with rocks, and jumped off. This was very upsetting to Anna and her mother, as, it would be. But then what made matters even worse and even weirder was that 7 months after her father killed himself, Anna's mother packed a bag full of rocks and did the exact same thing. While Anna's grieving this, she's also really, really angry that, first of all, that her father would do it, but then that her mother, seeing the kind of pain that she was in from losing her father, would then go and do the exact same thing to her. So she's sad and she's mad. So when the book opens up, it's a year after her mom dies. And Anna has a boyfriend. They're living in the family home because her dad used to run a car dealership with her uncle. So now her uncle runs it. And she's a partner too because her father's stake in the business was left to her in his will. So she's living in the family home with this boyfriend that she has, and a couple months ago she's had a baby. So her life is totally different than it had been before her parents died. So it's the year anniversary of when her mom died, and in the mail she gets this card on that day, and she opens it up and it's it's a happy anniversary card. And it's it's pink and gaudy and a real celebratory card. And that disturbs her enough. And then she opens it up and then it says, "Suicide? ? Think again." So this kind of sets Anna off, as it would. And she starts to kind of get really panicked. So she begins to worry that maybe her parents were murdered, that they didn't kill themselves, and now whoever killed them is after her. So she goes to the police, because the police, of course, handled both of the suicide cases at the time and ruled them as suicide. So she goes to the police to ask them to reopen the case. So the man she's talking to, his name is Murray, and he's sort of at the front desk when she gets to the police department. And he can remember the case, and he's retired now from being a beat cop, and he's just sort of working the desk so that, so that he has somewhere to be, because after so many years being a cop, and then going to nothing, he just still wanted to be a part of it. And so he takes the card from her, makes a copy of it, gets the info, and he starts to really get invested in it. And he starts, he thinks, murder, how? That doesn't make any sense. It was so clearly a suicide. But there's something about it that makes him take it seriously. But instead of bringing it to the police officers, he decides that for now he's going to keep it to himself and see what he can figure out. So while this is all sort of unfolding, we find out a bit about Murray too and his backstory, and it's really interesting. He has a wife that he absolutely adores, that he's been married to for 40 plus years, but throughout their whole relationship, she's really suffered with mental illness. And at the time, she's currently in a hospital for the, upteenth time in their 40-year relationship. And he's dealing with that. And Christmas is getting close. It's like the 20th or 21st of December. And so he's happy to have something to sort of work with. And honestly, the Murray character was so delightful. Out of all the characters, he was my absolute favorite. And yeah, it was a great character, a well-written, well thought out, well-planned character, and I really liked it. So while all of this is going on, we're also given, like, in between each chapter of these two people's, Anna's and then Murray's stories, we're given really thin chapters written in italics that are really like ominous. And at first we don't really know whose perspective we're reading here. But you start to get the feel that it's either her mom or her dad, that one of them is still alive. But you don't know who it is that's writing these chapters. Then as things progress, Christmas comes and gets closer, then it passes, and then New Year's is coming, and one night they're all sort of sitting around in the living room. It's, Anna and her husband and her baby, and they're just sort of sitting around, and they have some friends over, or neighbors over, and while they're all visiting, they hear a crash up in the baby's room. And they rush up, and then there's a note tied to a brick that was thrown in through the nursery window. And the brick had landed in the crib, and there's broken glass and the brick. And, like, if the baby had been in the crib, the baby would have been killed. And then the note on the brick just sort of says, like, stay away from the police. You're going to get in trouble. Stop. It's much less wordy than that, but that's the gist of it. So the whole book really is us trying to find out who's alive, how did her parents die? Was it suicide? Was it murder? Was one a suicide? Was one a murder? What happened? And it's a very cleverly written story. And I will say, I had not guessed the plot twist before we got to it. Because so often, I'll be reading one of these sort of thrillers, and they're not my favorite type of book. I prefer dark, like, literary fiction. And not often does a sort of thriller fit into that category, with the exception of, I would think, maybe Bellevue Square. But these are fun to read sometimes, and normally I'm so good at calling the plot twist, and that's fine. It just makes me feel like, yeah, I'm really good at plot twists. It doesn't often take away from the story for me, as long as the story remains, as long as the story can stand on its own 2 feet, even if I have guessed the plot twist, it doesn't bother me. But I did not guess the plot twist for this one. So there you go. If you like those sort of mystery thrillers, and I know a ton of you do, I think you would really like this. After I was done reading this, I went to Goodreads and I wanted to see what people were saying about it. And it's got a pretty high, I think it's like a 4-star from all the reviews, or if not a 4-star, almost a 4-star. So I did not guess the plot twist. I love that about this book. I'm going to leave it there for anyone who does not want any spoilers, but just know it's well written. The characters are good. Anna is very likable. Murray is very likable. Anna's boyfriend is kind of like likable. He's not the most likable. He's no Murray. Let's leave it at that. And now, please sign off here if you don't want to hear any spoilers. I'm just going to give a couple quick ones for those who I know like to hear what the story's about. Alright, I will see you Monday, guys. Okay, now where were we? What ends up being what's happening is the italic, tiny, creepy chapters that we're reading are from Anna's mom's point of view. And she comes back into town and she's sort of slinking around, keeping an eye on Anna. She notices she has a granddaughter, and that kind of breaks her down. And one day she approaches Anna, like she knocks on the door and she's like, "Oh, hey, surprise." And Anna's like, "Nope," and slams the door in her face. Because when she sees her mother, she is mad. She's mad. And so her mom comes in and tells her that her and her father had this plan. That the business was in trouble. He needed a loan. He needed to get out of the business. And so it was this whole thing with him faking his own death, and then her sort of following suit, and then they were kind of gonna go and live together, blah blah. But that's all a lie. That's just what she's telling Anna at first. What we find out is that also in these small chapters we've been reading about this very violent alcoholic. And, you know, once we know that the chapters are from, well, once we're pretty sure that the chapters are from Anna's mom's point of view, we think, oh, so the dad was like a violent alcoholic. But it turns out that those portions were from his point of view. And it's actually the mom that was the violent alcoholic. And she had one night, in a fit of rage, she had hit him with something, and it knocked him down. This was not the first time she had hit him. She'd hit him many, many times before, but this time he didn't get up. And she ends up burying him. And like in the backyard. And so then she stages it to make it look like it was a suicide. She gets someone to, she brings someone into it, and it's a cousin of Anna's that we met briefly earlier in the book. And so she gets this cousin to help her. And, you know, they sort of plan it together, and she says, you know, I'll give you a cut if you help me bury this body, help me make it look like he killed himself. You can be a fake witness saying you saw him jump. And then what happens after that is the cousin doesn't just want her cut. She wants more. Like, she gets greedy and confident after it happens. And then, so that's when the mom sort of fakes her death and takes off. And now she's back, and she's volatile. And so that was such a, when it came out, like, oh, the dad's an alcoholic and the mom was trying to run from him, like, that seemed very cliched, and I was like, okay, whatever. That was kind of, I'd kind of been thinking that, or I had been thinking that it was something sketchy with Anna's boyfriend, but it wasn't him. That was sort of like, you know, the false flag put up that we think it had something to do with her boyfriend, but it didn't. And then, yeah, when it turned out that it was the mom all along that was like the violent alcoholic, that got me. I'll say it. That got me pretty good. I hadn't seen it coming. It was very well written, very clever. Yeah. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, you should definitely give it a read. And I even heard, when I also went back to Goodreads, that her first novel is even like better. That the third one's kind of like the least favorite of the three. So I might keep my eye out for that first one down the road. So thank you so much for watching, you guys. Since it's Friday on my channel here, I want to give a quick shout out, and today's shout out goes to Linda over at the New Orleans Gardener. Linda is the absolute best. She makes these beautiful videos about her garden, and they're just so relaxing to watch. Just listening to her talk brings me absolute joy. The other day she posted a video about making a red onion vinaigrette. Like, there's so much nourishment and comfort to her videos. I love them. And if you don't already know Linda, you should definitely go and check her out. I'll have her link in the description box down below. And if you do go check her out, please let her know that I sent you. See you on Monday, guys. Bye.